Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farhan Dogar. Once again, we are going to talk about Pakistan's politics as the name of the program suggests. But today we are going to talk about the accountability because the Prime Minister of Pakistan went to Lahore yesterday. And there in a press talk, the first ever press talk that he held, he said that he believes that the government should be, or NAB should be pursuing all the corrupt people faster and quicker. Of course, the contingent factor is the arrest of Shahbaz Sharif, the leader of the opposition in the National Assembly of Pakistan and the president of PMLN, Pakistan Muslim League, Nawaz. After that, of course, a lot has been said, a lot has been discussed. Today, we are going to talk about accountability, what to expect in coming days. And just before I introduce the panel, I must tell you that two of my participants are critics, although they have very different positions on this issue as well, and one representation from the government's allied party. So today I'm going to try understanding what exactly is going on. Then the Prime Minister of Pakistan also spoke about some very important issues. For example, he spoke about, the devolution of power, empowering the local bodies, local governments. Here also the government ally, reference comes handy. Let me introduce the guest I've got in the studio. I have with me Dr. Niaz Murtaza. Needs no introduction, has been appearing on this program for quite a while. He's a political economist, also columnist of renown. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Shaukat Piracha, sir. Again, a regular on PTV World, a regular in this show as well, a journalist, a talk show host, and whatnot. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Barrister Muhammad Ali Saif, Senator of Murtaza Qawmi Movement. And I have to start with him, although out of this panel you must have noted who might be the critic and who might not be. Barrister Saab, I have to start with you. What do you think of the accountability process and why the rush now?
Well, accountability and the process is kind of pivotal to the progress of this nation. Unless you have transparent and fair accountability, you cannot achieve the system that is called a system based on good governance.
Right.
Insofar as the current pace is concerned, I believe the pace is still the same. I don't think there is some extraordinary impetus being given to the pace as such. The only highlight of the accountability debate is the arrest of Mr. Shahbaz Sharif recently. And I believe that, in my personal opinion, there are two angles or two dimensions to this particular incident. One is the legality of it and the other is the political dimension. So far as the legal dimension is concerned, we all know that accountability laws in Pakistan have a wide ambit, especially Section 9 and 10 of the NAB ordinance and the powers given to the chairman NAB, powers of arrest, detention, investigation. Yes, so in that context, if you analyze the arrest, I believe that the exercise of powers is beyond any doubt. He had exercised his powers, and I believe that they are within the legal limits because the law does provide him with ample powers. The problem that has surfaced is the political angle, political angle of it.
Okay.
And the question that has been debated is, from the opposition side, yes, their stance is that it was untimely, it was basically a kind of victimization in order to thwart the political process leading up to the by-elections and all that.
Okay.
And they're giving it that color, no doubt. And
correct me if I'm wrong. An arrest at this time doesn't help actually the opposition's cause? It does. Because then you have sympathy of some sorts.
Yes, there are multi-dimensional aspects of this particular incident, as I said, but I'm just like the kind of hue and cry that they made today in the Senate, during the Senate debate,
Okay.
The idea was, and basically the allegation was that he has been arrested in order to make sure that we get the election results in our favor.
Right, but,
and also that it's political victimization.
But Shahbaz Sharif arrested, Nawaz Sharif free. At that time, elections take place. It sort of helps them rather than anybody
In a
else.
way, yes, yes.
Let me go to Shaukat Piracha Sahab. Sab, you must have seen the Prime Minister's speech talk yesterday, and you must have seen what is going on in the accountability as well. Somehow, it seems that the narrative that is building in the media, at least, or the opposition side, is that victimization is going on.
We live in a situation where politics is on the two extremes.
Okay.
There is no middle way so far left in the politics of Pakistan. And Senator Saab has very rightly pointed out that one aspect is political, the other is legal.
Okay.
In the political side, I wanted to talk about the political aspect.
Right.
For example, he is leader of the opposition, Shahbaz Sharif.
Right.
Secondly, he has been Chief Minister of Punjab for the last 10 years,
Okay.
And then many of Pakistanis, they do acknowledge that he has been a very hard-working person. And I remember on record, two of the chief ministers of other provinces, they've been saying publicly that his is a good model of development.
Okay.
So when we talk purely in the political context, then the hue and cry is part of politics. If his party, which is the leading figure in the Senate, highest number of senators they do have, they have the 169 they got recently in the Senate election, one by-election,
Okay.
and then they have the largest opposition party
Not
in the National
169,
Assembly.
69? How
169 when there was a by-election of the Senate in Punjab Assembly.
Okay, votes. Okay.
Yeah, 169.
No, I thought that you're talking about the seats.
No, 169 votes, And 181 the government party got Dr. Wasim Shahzad, and 169 Khaja Hassan got. So if they have such a big number mean big number of votes, big number mean big number of seats in the provincial assembly, then obviously in a political environment you will see such kind of hue and cry or their legitimate demands, whatever is the party position at that time. However, when ministers or prime minister talks about accountability, and prime minister says that if I had been there then 50 people would have been arrested, prime minister is talking constantly what he has been talking in the past when he was in the opposition
you see any
side.
logical consistency there, right?
There is a consistency in the voice of Mr. Imran Khan as PTI chairman. But when you hold power, and when we say, as Senator Saab was saying, that NAB is an independent body, NAB is an institution of the state, then why Prime Minister or Minister, they need to talk about, you see. Then courts are there. For example, today, you talked about Mian Nawaz Sharif, he appeared before the court. The good thing, the positive aspect of this whole development to me is that at least the system is functioning.
Right.
That courts are functioning,
Right.
that people are seeking pleas from the court. They may be talking about the system of judiciary or legal system, but still they are knocking the doors of the same courts. That is something, is a ray of hope to me, that still we are sailing, in some positive direction.
Yeah, but somehow it seems that when it comes to expecting from prime ministers, we expect too much of filters. That the prime minister shouldn't say this, that. He said if he had powers. That means he doesn't have the powers. So he is implying that had he got the powers, he could have done that.
When the critics, just 1 minute, when the critics talk about this, or they say, the exact meaning of different critics remain that there are so many problems in the country. For example, price hike is there, people are suffering. The concentration should be there on in terms of delivery, in terms of performance, and this aspect should be left to the institution, which institutions are responsible
Yeah,
for
but
this.
a man can talk, come on. Well, you cannot stop a man from saying something. I mean, if he says something really unparliamentary, then criticize him. At this moment, he is just expressing his wishes or how he sees the world. But Dr. Niaz Murtaza, I have to come to you, sir. A, accountability. You can do take stock of what is going on. And then there's another thing. Every political party today claiming that they are victims, yesterday were in power. And they had the capacity to repeal or replace the NAB ordinance. None of them did that. There must be some reason behind it. Today, when they say that they are victims or they are being victimized, how much credence do you give to that claim?
Well, I don't think anybody is arguing against the accountability process or even about, the laws, as Senator said. There is, a clause in the law which allows a NAB to hold people on physical remand for a certain number of days. Okay. But the question is, that law does not get applied to every person that NAB starts investigating.
Okay.
Nobody is saying that there shouldn't be accountability against Shahbaz Sharif because he was a brilliant administrator and so on, nor should he be given special treatment. But it seems that he is being given special treatment of the reverse kind.
Okay.
Normally you don't arrest people so early in the process of the investigation.
How early is this? Just qualify how
I
early
think
is
they're just doing, they haven't even indicted him, they're just doing an investigation.
Okay.
Right? So to, arrest,
they must have gone through a court, have they?
They took him to a court and the court has given 10 days remand.
Right.
But, the basic initiation came from NAB. The court wouldn't have, given that verdict if, the NAB hadn't taken the cases to them. The second thing we need to remember is that, he has a second job. He's the leader of the opposition, which in some ways is the second most important job in Pakistan. He has work to do. And when you have the fact that, NAB has a very poor track record of conviction as well as prosecution. I don't know what percentage of cases of NAB ever succeed in convicting anybody.
If you go to
there is a
Dr.
very high
Dr. Saab, if you go to their website, they have actually proclaimed, they claim that they have actually
I haven't
successfully closed a lot of cases, although they were not of political
but
exposure.
I think percentage-wise,
So they were not of political exposure, so you wouldn't track them. But they have succeeded in completing.
Very few percentage. So there's a very high chance that even this case will not get anywhere.
Okay.
And in the meantime, they have, arrested, the leader of the opposition. So it doesn't make any sense. Then, the other point
No, but
about the speech.
there's a reverse argument as well. A leader of the opposition, by virtue of holding that office, should he be walking free without any accountability at all?
No, I mean, if they indict him, if they convict him, surely then he should go behind bars. But at this stage, when he's cooperating, he's going to NAB every day that they call him. What is the purpose in arresting him?
Yeah, remand
at this
is
stage?
something different, right? You obtain information in detail. You spend some time with the man.
You can call him for the whole day. He'll sit there, and then next day he
Okay,
can
regarding
do something else.
regarding another aspect, before I go to Barrister Sir, because you have raised a very important point, but regarding the person of Chairman NAB, it is astounding that not only the pro-opposition television pundits keep criticizing him, I have heard many of the pro-government and pro-PTI or pro-accountability anchors also criticizing him, claiming that he is not doing things fast enough.
Well,
Why
that
would
was
that
the
be?
argument of the Prime Minister as well, that if I had been in charge, I would have arrested 50 people. Well, he may not be in charge of NAB, but he's in charge of FIA and the police and FIA can also arrest people. So
But
why
they
doesn't
haven't
he
so
start
far.
with people in his own party? I mean, you hear so many accusations from the same credible media that you hear about, all these things about Shahbaz Sharif, Zardari, and
Yeah, but
the same
you
media is also
realize
talking about.
if there's a small minister in a junior cabinet or a small province,
So he should walk free.
and no,
he
not
should
at all.
walk free.
But a CM who stayed in power for
Well, there
10
are
years.
accusations against the CM
10
of
years.
KPK. There are accusations of
but
the
there is a
de
CM.
facto CM of Punjab.
Yeah.
We all know who the de facto CM of Punjab
They
is,
are
right?
they are
There
NAB.
are accusations against the Speaker of Punjab
There
Assembly.
are NAB references against them. with similar kind of indictments or similar kind of evidence?
They may not be NAB cases. I
So,
don't know the details.
apples and
but yeah.
oranges, right?
But there might be FIA investigations. There might be other NAB. Against Aleem Khan,
Right.
there are investigations going on. I'm
You're,
not sure about.
you're calling Aleem Khan de facto CM of
I
Punjab?
think that's what he is, senior
Okay,
minister.
okay.
Yeah.
I never saw that coming because I
think
don't
so.
think
A lot
that
of
is
people
true.
are talking about
But
that.
let me go back to Barrister Saab. Sir, Dr. Saab has just pointed out a very important thing. He's saying that in due courts, in due process, there has to be indictment before you take somebody into custody and remand him. What is your understanding of Shahbaz Sharif case?
Well, insofar as when you mention the term indictment, it has a special connotation. It means somebody who has been charged by the court. When the court frames a charge against a person who has been brought by the police after due investigation has been carried out, then it is for the court to indict. Indictment means that yes, there is a charge and you have to answer that through trial. In this case, insofar as NAB ordinance is concerned, as I said earlier, pointed out, Chairman NAB has wide-ranging powers.
Okay.
The moment NAB takes cognizance of an offense or of a case, an inquiry is initiated, from that point onwards, Chairman NAB has the authority to issue a warrant of arrest. Generally, they do not issue it at the level of inquiry. The practice is that once inquiry is promoted or declared to be upgraded to the level of investigation, from there onwards, a Chairman NAB can issue a arrest warrant of any individual who is a suspect or an accused.
Okay.
Generally, what happens is that if it's a high-profile accused or if the chances of abscondence are minimum, then there is no need for arrest, because arrest is an extreme measure. You only arrest a person when you are sure that in case he finds out, he might either tamper with witnesses, tamper evidence, or he may abscond, run away. So in this case, as far as I've heard and I've read in the newspapers and on the media, Shahbaz Sharif had been cooperating with NAB authorities. Whenever he was called, he went there and he recorded his statements. But maybe Chairman NAB, in his understanding, probably believed it appropriate, thought it appropriate to go ahead and arrest him. He has been arrested. But again, as I said, insofar as the exercise of powers under NAB ordinance is concerned, that has been done in accordance with the law. However,
question.
the issue is the optics of this case.
Right.
That is what is being exploited by the opposition.
And optics are there and they are quite visible. The way he was brought to the court and then he was taken back, people remember that coverage. But here's the next question. Should NAB or Chairman NAB have that kind of wide-ranging powers?
Insofar as the should is concerned, you see, that is something, that is a matter for the legislature to decide whether they should extend.
A legislator.
Yeah, you're right. And I have been part of, recently, last year, there was a committee formed for the review of NAB ordinance. I was member of that committee, and it was a joint parliamentary committee from both houses, and all parties were represented.
Last year, that means PMLN was in government?
Yeah, when PMLN was in government, yes. That was in the context of Panama leaks and all that. NAB committee was, this particular parliamentary committee was formed. You see, the issue is, it is not the powers given to a certain office bearer of a certain organization. It is the intention behind the use of that powers, right? The system which compels a person, an office bearer, a higher up, the way he exercises his powers, that is what gives rise to such controversies.
Right.
In my opinion, NAB has always been regarded as an institution which has used its powers, its wide-ranging powers, in order to politically victimize victims. And it's not something, it's not a new allegation. We have been hearing these allegations since 1999, and even before that, when it was called Ehtasab Commission during Saif Rahman's times, right? So NAB is basically a continuation of Ehtasab Bureau. When General Musharraf took over, he named it National Accountability Bureau. Anyways, and I had been involved in NAB, and actually even in the drafting of its laws at that time. I was Additional Prosecutor General in NAB, so I'm kind of privy to these practices. But my
now you have to tell me, what did you do at that time?
Yeah.
that they haven't been able to change the law for 11 years, 12 years?
Because the law was considered to be more effective in the context of Pakistani legal system and especially the criminal justice system. You see, the British common law and the criminal law system is more kind of inclined towards giving benefit or giving kind of rights
benefit
to the accused.
Right.
So the idea was that corruption has
just
become
take
such
it away.
widespread, that you curtail the power of you curtail the rights of the accused and give more powers to the prosecution in order to facilitate it to be able to
So
prosecute.
what happens to presumption of innocence?
Presumption of innocence is definitely there because that's a fundamental principle of law. But in the cases of NAB or white collar crimes, not just NAB, I mean, it's a wide ranging concept. But in the case of white collar crimes, once the prosecution establishes a prima facie case, then the burden of proof shifts to the accused. He has to then discharge the burden and disprove that.
But presumption of innocence is pivotal to anybody's rights.
Of course it is. It is,
is,
even
right?
in this case. Now till Shahbaz Sharif is proved guilty by the court, is convicted, he will be considered to be an innocent
This
person.
argument can run other way around as well. But the question is, if there is a law with such wide-ranging powers, Shaukat Piracha sahab, and you have been covering the parliaments and the governments for quite some time, why is it that the political parties haven't been able to replace it with a law that is agreed upon by all the parties?
That's a fundamental question. But I remember all the political parties were against 8th Amendment. But it took almost 15 years or 14 years to repeal it. Imposing a law or promulgation of a PCO is easier, in our context. But repealing the distortions, they are very difficult.
Okay.
Because, if it was a Ehtasab Commission, against the intent was not a law across the board.
Okay.
The intention was to implicate for political victimization. And when NAB was, imposed in this country, again, the intent appeared to be, it was to victimize, or to arm twist.
No, the optics were that Pakistan has accountability problem and it has to be addressed.
It's a slogan,
Right.
I'm giving my perception, my opinion.
No, but I'm
You
talking
have
about the argument that was used.
the argument I'm telling you, because whatever the content of a law or your move, you will describe it in a very beautiful manner, in a very logical words. But when it comes to practice and application of that law, then one has to understand what was the intent. For example, during the early years of General Pervez Musharraf, whosoever came to this side of the cleavage, he was neat and clean. Whosoever remained on the other side of the cleavage, they were twisted by the same law. That's why I am saying the either Ehtasab Commission or NAB, from the very beginning, the intent of the makers of that time.
Okay, here's another question for you, and that is very important, sir. Whenever you talk about political victimization or political wheeling and dealing, you are cutting some slack to people who might actually be guilty as well, right? It happens all over the country. On television, people say political victimization. That means we have done nothing wrong. But there are people who have done wrong. How do you address that problem? You said accountability, like accountability, 8th Amendment was repealed after a lot of time. But immediately after the creation of 8th Amendment, there wasn't any Charter of Democracy signed. We saw one Charter of Democracy signed in 2007. And then 2008 happens, right? After that, we saw that a Democratic Party came into power. They never touched it with a barge pole.
8th Amendment was not repealed in 2007.
No,
it
no,
was
it was
repealed in 1999.
I know,
February.
I know.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that's
13th
why.
Amendment.
Pardon me?
13th Amendment. Through 13th Amendment.
It was in the second government of Mian Muhammad Nawaz Sharif, Again, the argument I am trying to build
But
here.
you missed a point. I said that before NAB was created, around the time NAB was created, there was a signature of Charter of Democracy, right?
No, no, no. NAB was created before COD was signed.
Yeah, it was very close, was it
No,
not?
no. NAB was created in 2001 or 2.
1999.
99.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
even before that, you know, COD, Charter of Democracy, was signed in 2005-6, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And once it is done,
Yes,
you expect the next government, that is democratic government, to actually do something about fulfilling the promise that was made in the
Yes.
Charter of Democracy. Didn't happen. You never saw similar kind of consensus after the creation of 8th Amendment.
Some progress was made. It's good that you are talking of the political history of Pakistan. For example,
Actually,
in the
you
COD,
started it.
in the COD, they agreed that the chairman NAB will be appointed in consultation with the leader of the opposition. So Chaudhry Nisar Ali Khan, when he was the leader of the opposition, 2 or 3 chairman NAB, they were just axed because there was no meaningful consultation with the leader of the opposition. Then with this 18th and 19th amendment, this was also a byproduct of Charter of Democracy.
Yeah, but I was talking about accountability where they say they are going to remove. And
Even
let me take this
Nawaz
question.
Sharif, when he once appeared in the Ihtisab court or before JIT, he confessed that when the opposition was saying that we should reform NAB, I should have cooperated with them.
Yeah,
So
but
realization was there, but the time was gone.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda is one
Time
thing.
was gone, yes.
Why is it that political parties, when they are in power, cannot unpack, repeal, replace, reform these institutions?
Well, sometimes they don't have a 2/3 majority. Sometimes, there is competition among them. There are various reasons.
People's Party, you're saying
Look
that
at,
PMLN didn't want to
62,
cooperate with them.
62, 63, the PPP wanted to have it removed. I think it was during the 18th Amendment deliberations, but the PMLN opposed it, and ultimately it hurt it. So, we can talk about all of those issues, and, there's a lot of things that we should blame our political parties about. But still, the topic right now is, whether NAB, it's not so much about that the laws are wrong or bad. Of course, you can argue that NAB doesn't have enough powers right now. Maybe it should be not a bureau, but a commission with even more wide-ranging powers. But then, those powers should be applied responsibly and, objectively and in a neutral fashion,
No,
so
that
that
is
it doesn't
true.
appear.
But I understand because of this polarization in the system, what happens is that I'm a common man and I want this country's resources back where they belong. On one side, there are people who are saying that the other party has stolen everything. On this side, when you listen to them, they say they are victims. You have to endorse or listen to either one of them, right? People do that
Well,
in a
simple thing
polarized
is-
society. My concern is that we keep on fighting, but we are not solving the problem.
Well,
That is, corruption shouldn't be there in the process.
Simple thing is, apply the rules evenly to all parties. If you are, putting Shahbaz Sharif behind bars, on the same day put somebody from PTI behind bars
Yeah.
too. Or from PPP.
On the same day.
More or less,
You
at
realize,
least in the past, it
you-
doesn't have to be on the same day. But if you're doing it even-handedly over the
so,
weeks,
but
over
you
the months.
realize that a legal process doesn't work like that. If you are found guilty or if there is enough proof, they'll arrest you. Otherwise, they
But
won't.
he hasn't been found guilty yet. This
No,
is
he
at
hasn't
the
been.
inquiry or at the investigation stage, and there are numerous cases against, PTI, People's Party members which are also at the inquiry and investigation stage. So why are those people not being arrested? What's so special about this case? So, it's those kind of issues which, make you wonder whether this is about accountability or, victimization. Of course, I don't have any proof that, the PTI government, somehow forced NAB to, arrest him. And
No,
maybe,
that
they
would
were.
not be the case.
I don't think it would be the case. I think it's just NAB's
Because that
overzeal
was
in
the
this case.
trajectory that continued even before the elections. And I'm talking about general elections, and it had
Yeah.
nothing to do with PTI.
So right now the issue is that, NAB is not very well using even the powers that it has right now. It's goofing up so often. Remember that $4 billion transfer to India. These kind of cases, and, the way they prosecuted Nawaz Sharif's case. So, it raises questions, that you give at least some independence to an institution.
Okay.
And still
And
it's
you're
not
talking
able to
about
do
NAB,
its job.
right?
Yeah, I'm talking about NAB,
Okay.
and it's still not able to do its job well.
Barrister Saab, especially the junior, partners of government or opposition, especially like your party, Can I make a humble request? Because you have a very unique vantage point. You don't have to defend the entire government all the time, every moment, right? But still, you're part of the coalition as well. Is it possible that people, learned people like you, can come up with some proposals and publish a white paper, perhaps, or a monograph for the benefit of people like me? Because I see either one side where there's a junkyard of too much literature, meaning hardly anything. On the other side, when you look at the parliament, if there were committee meetings, hardly anything is published. As a citizen, as someone who has a voice on television at least, I would like to argue for the right kind of case. And I don't even know where the true north lies right now.
Well, it's insofar as your point is concerned, I totally agree with you. I cannot disagree with you, I must say. But the point is that when you look at the practicalities of things, you see, and the way things are managed, decisions are made, actions are taken by the government and within the official circles,
Okay.
the reality is totally different. They may know that an action is required, but they may not take it for policy reasons, for political reasons, for probably some personal grudges between two individuals which become institutional grudges. So there are, you know, these practicalities which are, in other words, are called the vicissitudes of life. You have these vicissitudes existing everywhere, and you have to counter them and confront them all the time. If I was given the decision or the choice to decide whether or not to deal with Mr. Shahbaz Sharif the way he was dealt with, I believe I would have probably taken a different course of action. I would have probably taken taken into consideration both the legality and the political aspects of it.
Right.
And this controversy would have been avoided. But do I have that authority? Would somebody be, is there anybody listening, willing to listen? Because the problem is that when you are in the driving seat, you think you are the driver and you must be allowed to drive the way you want to drive.
Yeah, but I understand what happens today, Barrister Saif, will happen, right? If somebody has been apprehended, they are not going to be let go just because you or I are arguing here. But tomorrow, when there's a change, somebody is asking for a design, a new architect is in town, you need to have some, blueprints lying around. I don't see that happening.
You're right, yes. I agree with you. In that respect, yes, there are decisions being taken at the very high level and also at the lower level, just on reactions, based on reactions. There is no considerate,
Deeper thought
concerted,
involved.
yes, deeper thought involved. There is no intellectual input going on, into decisions. And that is why you see that one day a decision is taken in one way and the other day the repercussions are totally different, and then it's kind of, taken back. So this is one of the problem of our system. I would say it's not just an individual problem, it's an institutional problem all over.
Right. Shaukat, Piracha sahab, some accountability for our own profession as well. Those of us who sit on television screens, who talk about various political or accountability issues, there is a group of pundits, and I mean there's an anchor who claims that he is the senior most television anchor in Pakistan's history. And every day you see that he is talking about badmashia, this, that, corrupt mafia. Politics is corruption, nothing else. The question is, who's going to ask the anchors to be even-handed in their approach in accountability as well? Or should an anchor be doing this kind of summary, execution or trial on television at all?
I was really expecting that when an anchor, I don't know to whom you want to address, but
you smiled. But but you're not going to agree.
An anchor, was summoned by the court. A case was,
There was a wild claim about a rapist and all that.
Exactly. I thought maybe, Supreme Court should have set some direction.
No, but why expect it from Honorable Court, which has a lot of pendency? You and I are journalists. We work for various organizations who have heads also. They can sit together. They can come up with a voluntary code of conduct.
If something is so important that you are taking it up and pendency is an issue, but honorable court is also doing a lot of other things, you know. So this should have been also very important when especially a case was put up before the
No,
court.
but Piracha sahab, you'll appreciate what I'm saying.
Nowadays,
it is what you are saying
there is
is
another
called
demand.
passing the buck. That I will say, I'm not going to do it, you do something about it.
You know, many anchors,
Although this is
many
my
anchors,
profession, my home, my work.
many anchors, they are not journalists, you know. They have never been journalists.
So?
They don't know the media ethics. Should I expect them, you know, and there is also a term called paratroopers. I will not go beyond this term, you know. So when so many
You know
factors,
what, paratroopers were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Now they are organic part of your television screen. We have to own them and then request them to change their opinion.
Next 100 years, you know, they will remain the same, I tell you, because, you know, the process through which you and I or Dr. Saab has been, they have not been through. There is a good important, you know, demand nowadays on the social media, and some of our journalists, they are also supporting it, that all those journalists who were bribed in 2014, you know, Dharna days, their name should be brought up. There must be some
They
list.
should be done.
That could be the turning point. That should be one step toward the ideal that you are talking of. Otherwise, you know, it's just a,
People who were bribed by whom?
you know it, you know.
No, there was accusation that the previous government used to bribe people as well.
No,
There's always
there is
this
a
allegation and
specific-
counter allegation
no, there is
that
a
somebody is
specific-
bribing somebody.
There is a specific case going on, specific demand going on, that at the time of 2014 Dharna, some journalists or group of journalists, they were handed over a huge chunk of money, each of them, and that list is with the government.
Okay.
And it is being demanded of the government of
Pakistan.
Imran Khan,
Okay.
PTI, that Prime Minister should, you know, make public that particular list, you know. If that particular list is
Is
unearthed
made public.
or made public, the question that you are talking of will partly be addressed.
Yeah, but that actually further confirms my doubts that somehow system is so broken that no matter what you do, you won't be able to fix it. I am, and you are one of those people who have to work with economy as well, right? Simultaneously, we are seeing that your economy keeps on leaking, it hemorrhages. And on the other side, you have the concerns that there is massive bribe or corruption involved. What do we do now?
Well, I mean, you know, basically it's about, you know, strengthening institutions, and, you know, that's what the focus of this government should be. That's why, you know, I found the Lahore speech, you know, quite odd, you know, coming from a prime minister. I'm going to catch all the thieves. You know, he needs to understand his job. His job is not to go physically and catch thieves. You know, that's the
I
job
know,
of the police.
but he is the elected Prime Minister of
his job-
Pakistan. He
his
has
job
the
is
right to say
strengthen
whatever he wants to say.
institutions. So when he speaks, he should be talking about his job as to how he's going to strengthen the police, the FIA. He should not be talking about, I want to catch this thief, I want to catch this thief. So again, you know, a focus on institution, a focus on what his job
Hang
is
on,
now,
what are you,
grow up into the
Sir,
job.
Dr. Saab, what are you objecting to? The
I'm
use-
objecting to the kind of language that is being used.
of
and,
thievery?
you know, the dramatization.
No,
the
hang
dramatization.
on. If somebody, I don't know which one was he talking about, and I'm not particularly talking about a particular politician. If somebody stole from the exchequer,
Yeah,
should
talk
they
about
not be called
strengthening institutions.
Should they not be called thief?
Well, I mean, you know, for the Prime Minister to be, you know, talking about these things, you know, he should be focusing on his job, which is to strengthen institutions.
but
don't
don't you think-
personalize it, you know, because the same person is also your political rival. So, you know, it gives the impression that you are personalizing it,
But-
you're speaking
but
with venom,
this
you are
verbal
speaking with
policing-
vengeance.
Sir, hang
You're
on,
not
sir.
talking like a Prime Minister who should be thinking about policy
Sir,
work.
this verbal policing of the Prime Minister has to stop someday, right? We keep on saying that Prime Minister should say this or that. There is a reason why you and I are not Prime Minister. He is. People voted for him, right? If he is saying something, without, of course, he doesn't have the kind of powers to actually arrest anybody in this case. Why should we police?
Well, because the problem is I heard the same language from Mr. Zardari and from Mr. not Nawaz Sharif, but at least
Nawaz
Shahbaz
Sharif also.
At some point, maybe even
In 90s.
But now this guy say he's a party of change. He's going to do politics differently, and I don't see that. He's doing politics exactly the way People's
with
Party
due respect,
and
we are
PMLN used to do.
expecting miracles in 45 days. That never happens. But Barrister Saab, now, what do we do with the corruption, massive corruption? We know that this country is indebted. We know that capital keeps on flying out of the country. We know that institutions didn't work the way they were supposed to. Now we have to actually go after people who might be thieves. But on the other side, we are reluctant to call them thieves. What happens now?
I believe nobody is reluctant to call a thief, or a robber, or a looter, or a corrupt person. I believe the technicality of the issue is, and I'll refer to even Islamic teachings as well, that you do not insinuate even, not directly allege, but even insinuation is prohibited unless you have definite proof of something. And unless that person, the law says that unless that person is convicted to be a thief, don't call him a thief, number one. So let the process...
Very clever of you to invoke Islam.
No, but,
Yeah,
but
I won't be able to come
there are several
back.
ahadiths on this issue, and even Quranic versions do not level accusations against somebody unless it's proven. The other issue is that, you see, our problem is not just corruption. Corruption is simply a systemic disorder which is a symptom of bad governance. Our problem is bad governance. And corruption and other issues that we see, moral and ethical problems and administrative problems, they're just byproducts or symptoms of that.
No, but you have to tell me which came first.
I believe it's the bad governance.
The egg or the chicken?
No, I believe it's the bad governance, because once the governance of a system gets weakened, and it can be manipulated by powerful elites or oligarchs, then the practice of corruption begins.
No, but is it not true that a system is functioning very well, and all of a sudden Farooq Batafi decides to accept brown envelopes from Barrister Saab? That day, Farooq Batafi will start bringing the entire system down.
Agreed, Farooq Batafi, but the issue is that Farooq Batafi would only be able to accept that brown envelope if there is a loophole in the system that he can exploit. And that is what I said is the issue of bad governance. Your governing mechanism should be so strong and so efficient, and so everybody should be under a certain radar in order to be able to avoid this. Well, that is a systemic disorder, you see, and a systemic disorder cannot be managed by one man or two people or one party. It requires time. It's a systemic disorder for the last 70 years of our existence, and probably it will go on like that. But what we can do is, realistically speaking,
but you said
and to be pragmatic,
it takes some time.
We know
70 years already.
We need to take solid steps in order to at least set the momentum in the right direction.
Recommend a couple.
There are many issues, like, for example, you start recruiting people not on the basis of your friendships or your relationships or nepotism, but go ahead and recruit people even if they are in your cabinet, or you are appointing them as the heads of departments based on merit.
How do you tell whether that person was selected on that basis
is a
or
judgmental
something
issue.
else?
Farooq Saab, that's a judgmental issue, right? But that is what leadership is. That is what leadership is. That is why he is a leader and I'm not a leader. I'm sitting with you here in a TV talk show and talking, right?
You're also a leader.
Because the control is in his hands. He has to decide who is the right person for the right job. So now my point is, it's a systemic disorder. It will take time. But my understanding is that dramatization of any issue, be that a political issue, be that a religious issue, be that a social or a moral issue, refrain from doing that. Because, and I'll just quote one sentence from a statement from David Miliband, who was a British foreign minister. He, while alluding to a statement made by David Cameron when he was in India, he said something. Somebody asked him, what do you think about his statement about David Cameron? Because he said something against Pakistan while he was in India, and Pakistan got quite, infuriated by that statement. So David Miliband said, God has given us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Better use ears more than your mouth.
So Shaukat Piracha Sahab, I'm told that we have to conclude the program very quickly. You want to sum up? You want to add to what was said? Please go ahead.
You started with corruption and ending corruption. If,
And I'm ending with corruption also.
if laws are applicable even-handedly, nobody will talk against
Yeah, but
any
who,
arrest.
who will be the judge of that even-handedness?
I mean, you are a
Media?
judge. I am a judge.
Media?
No. Listen, if there is a case or complaint or some inquiry against one individual, he is arrested,
Okay.
and couple of individuals who hold big posts at the moment, similar inquiry is being conducted against them, and in a similar cases
Okay.
they are implicated, they are scot free. Then the dream of a true anti-corruption drive or anti-corruption
Right.
regime will never be achieved.
Fair point, Dr. Zab.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't look at corruption only morally. We should look at it sociologically using social science tools. If we do that, what we find is this fairy tale story that we will first eradicate corruption and that will lead to massive progress. Not a single country in the world has gone through that path. What you do find is that countries develop despite high corruption, and then corruption goes down once the countries develop. Look
Dr.
at
Zab,
China, look at India.
I get that.
That transparency index
At macro level,
score
that
is
makes
the same.
perfect sense. But you and I have lived in this country, have you not?
So there is over dramatization
No,
of issues
hang on.
about corruption here.
I can, honest truth, I can tell you, and I'm sure that you share the argument with me as well. When we were growing up, when we were learning, when we were seeking job, and when we went through the process and the system, every step, on every step,
And
there
that's
was
true
corruption
in so many
that
other
stopped
countries.
us.
That's true for so many countries.
And we
but
suffered,
what you
sir.
do find is that there's no magic wand that you can wave where corruption will just
magic wand-
disappear. The only thing is as you develop, the government has the money to invest in institutions. Their capacity to control corruption
Right.
increases.
On that note, I'm told that we have to conclude, but I will definitely try to add to this so that I have my last laugh in this case. Dr. Saab, thank you very much, sir, for your time. Shaukat, Piracha Saab, always great having you on the show.
Thank you.
Barrister Saab, Barrister Mohammed Ali Saif, always great having you on the show. And I'm really happy whenever I see you that our legislature has people with this capacities and this conscience as well. Thank you very much. Viewers, you have listened to our participants. The problem here is that when you ask a common man like me, go anywhere and talk to anybody on the street, they'll tell you that their lives were made miserable by corruption. So everybody is going to support the idea of fighting corruption. But the problem is that whenever you agree on something, the intellectual elites make things so complicated. And I'm not talking about the people here. I'm talking about the custodians of narrative on television channels. I'm talking about custodians of narrative in newspapers, in think tanks elsewhere, that it becomes very difficult to tell right and wrong apart. And then one feels that for past 40, 50 years, we have been talking about accountability, we don't deliver. Now at least, I believe that if something has started, let us wait and hope that it completes its logical cycle. Once it does, then we'll take stock whether it has contributed to the society or not. This was my last laugh. With that, I have to conclude the program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.